Yeah, sure. Coming up tonight on Bounce News at 7. Former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick was convicted today of 22 counts of corruption. We'll discuss it with our legal team. And North Korea is making waves again. Pyongyang is invalidating a decades-old treaty. We'll talk about it. And should we be afraid to go to the beach? We'll do Shark Talk with Casanova Nurse. Bounce News at 7 starts right now.
You're watching Bounce TV News at 7.
So kids have a hard job of being just that, kids, which means they could act out. But what happens when it's your kid that's punished in a way you wouldn't approve? Good evening, I'm Rahman Johnson, and you're watching Bounce TV News at 7. Now, a Georgia teacher is out of the classroom tonight because she went too far in punishing a student.
How can a teacher do this to a 4-year-old, to any child, to any student?
It's a question that Tracy Quarles and her daughter LaTanya Murray have been asking for weeks now. Murray's 4-year-old son making allegations that when he is bad, his pre-K teacher at Copeland Elementary, Francine Wynn, will lock him in this closet located in the classroom.
As a mother, I had a tear in my eye because I'm like, what?
Murray tells us that she first heard of the problem from her son's principal, Kimberly Davis, when she first suspected something in December. When the boy denied something was wrong, Davis took no further action.
I was not aware that the parent was not contacted immediately.
2 months later, Murray tells us a paraprofessional reported that she saw the boy being put in the closet. That's when the principal called a meeting with Murray and her son.
She said, Jaden, tell me what's going on in Miss Wynn's class. My son looked at me. I said, okay. And I called him too. I said, Tootie, tell Miss Davis what's going on. He said, well, Miss Wynn be locking me in the closet, beating me with a spoon, thumping me, and locking me in the bathroom and turn the lights out.
Richmond County Board of Education Superintendent Frank Robertson says Wynn was immediately put on administrative leave and that the allegations are not being taken lightly.
Discipline is a good thing. It should be a positive thing. And in this particular case, of course, that did not happen. And that concerns us.
Murray and her mother say there has to be more that can be done, and they'll continue to fight until something more is.
If that was me, locking my child in a closet, you'd have had my behind locked up within 10 seconds. I want justice. I want her locked up. And I'm not going to stop until Jaden gets due process.
Now, the mother says that criminal charges haven't been filed, and if they're not, she'll be taking further action. Now, on the phone tonight, we have elementary school principal Christopher Small. And Dr. Small, is the principal and the Leon County Tallahassee Educator of the Year. Dr. Small, you with us?
Yes, sir.
All right, we've looked at this story, and you've had a chance to look at it today, and you're an elementary school principal. This teacher, are teachers not given rubric to tell them how to deal with students? And what would you do if you had a teacher that was locking a student in a closet?
There are definitely rubrics and expectations that are given to all staff, outside of even being at a specific school. Just in terms of professional certification, there are certain criteria that you have to meet in terms of your understanding of professional judgment, and that clearly wasn't followed in this situation. And looking at the initial report coming in December, I definitely think that should have been the start of something that probably should have continued prior to getting to the point where they are now, in terms of now having a full investigation and having outside individuals involved in criminal charges. If those initial reports came in December, there probably should have been some follow through on behalf of the administrators in the school to ensure that there weren't any found just causes for the allegations being made, and apparently there were some just causes for some additional investigation to take place.
Now, legally, this parent obviously said that she would go into trying to figure out what recourse she had. And we know that if a parent abused kids in a kid in a certain way, that they could be called in by the Department of Children and Families, or that the child may be taken out of the home. Even though this teacher has been taken out of the classroom, do you think there are criminal charges that will be filed? Could he or she lose their job? What do you think are the next steps that the school board would and or should take?
All of the above. I think at this point they definitely want to go back and investigate thoroughly, and having an interview every single child that's in that teacher's class, interviewing the paraprofessionals that are present to find out what exactly has been, taking place. And unfortunately, that's a long process. The investigation is something that does take a while, and having been through a few of those with similar issues, it takes a while to kind of get all of the things in place. And until that time, the teacher is, just due process of law, does have to be placed on administrative leave until, findings can be concluded. Right. And then at that point, the state would then decide on certification. So if her certification is going to be revoked, and then from there, if criminal charges are pressed, then she would have to, kind of suffer the consequences of those investigations as well. So it's a twofold issue.
Right. Dr. Small, thank you so much for your expertise. We'll be watching the story since it takes place right across our borders over in Georgia. Again, a teacher was taken out of the classroom for locking a child in the closet. Now, there was testimony back and forth, but in the end, the former mayor of Motor City was in hot water still. The verdict is in, and former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick was convicted of 22 counts of corruption. Kilpatrick was convicted on this huge list of charges, including fraud, bribery, and extortion. Now, Kilpatrick was mayor of Detroit from 2002 until his resignation in 2008. He's already behind bars from the other case, and from this case, he faces about 20 years in prison, but we won't know. Now, right now, there's no word on when he will be sentenced, but to give us a legal perspective on exactly what Mayor Kilpatrick may go through is Kwame Thompson, and I gotta say, it's a pun with the names Kwame and Kwame, but Kwame, he's joining us live on Skype from Wooderson and Thompson over in Georgia, Wooderson, Thompson, and Valburn. Kwame, tell us, with the mayor being indicted now on these federal charges, will the federal time that he gets go along with the state time that he received, or what should his prison sentence be like now?
Well, good evening, Rahman, and thank you for having me. Today's verdict, it definitely marks a historic blow to public trust in the city of Detroit. As you have stated, former Mayor Kilpatrick has been found guilty of 22 of the 30 charges of corruption. The two most important federal charges are those of extortion and that of racketeering. Now, what's important in the word racketeering is that racketeering actually traditionally includes other offenses, other criminal offenses. So these will not run simultaneously with any state charges. And the racketeering and extortion charges carry up to a maximum of 20 years.
Is there anything that the former mayor could do at this point that may, since obviously he was convicted by a jury of his peers, do you think and I know you've had a little bit of research done on the case, anything that may force a retrial or that he can go and appeal? Is there any appealable stuff in there with these kind of offenses that have been committed?
Well, Rahman, I have followed this case from day one. Of course, a lot of attorneys in America have, because this is one of such a disgrace when you have someone who is a rising star in his party who has been convicted now of these acts of mistrust. Now, there will probably be an appeal. However, you have to realize that these 22 charges stem from the corruption from the 2010 case. Now, there's also a trial that stemmed from a 2008 case, which involved improprieties, which the mayor had pled guilty to lying under oath. He actually violated probation under those terms and was sentenced to 14 months in jail. So he comes with little to no credibility.
And a whole lot of baggage. Kwame, one quick question. We only got a few seconds. We got to wrap up. But let's say he gets out of jail in 20 years. Can he come back from this?
I think that one of the things that the prosecutors has stated, that his criminal enterprise was a private money bank for him, and that his credibility is shot because he has a history of not doing what judges tell him to do, of violating court orders. So I don't think that he will have a career in the public office after this blow.
Kwame Thompson, Wooderson, Thompson, and Valburn over in Georgia, thanks so much for spending time with us. And again, the Detroit mayor, former mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, has been convicted tonight, 22 counts of bribery, embezzlement, all kinds of charges. Well, just ahead on Bounce News, there are sharks, not these kind of sharks, but sharks that are swimming in the water off the coast of Florida. We'll talk with Casanova Nurse and catch you up with headlines from around the world. We'll be right back. It could be another sign that the economy is getting better. Wedding website TheKnot.com says brides and grooms spent more money to get married last year than they have since the start of the economic downturn. Now, the site says the average wedding bill was just over $28,000. And the site says the site says spending increased in almost every category, from photographers to DJs to invitations. Now, couples in Manhattan spent the most, averaging nearly $77,000. And Alaskans were the most frugal. They spent an average of just over $15,000. I know guys, when they hear this story, are probably running the other way because they're not trying to get married anyway. Thanks for staying with us here on Bounce News. Mika Highsmith joins us live from the newsroom with a look at what's happening and what she's working on for WTXL ABC 27 News at 11. And Mika, there's big news at the Capitol on healthcare tonight.
Rahman, huge news at the Capitol as lawmakers against the governor over Medicaid. A Senate committee killed Governor Rick Scott's plan to expand Medicaid coverage to nearly 1 million Floridians. But this news isn't a complete surprise. We'll tell you why. Plus, could gay couples soon have the same rights as straight couples in Florida? We'll break down Florida lawmakers' plans. And if you already dread mosquitoes in the summertime, you will not like this. Why researchers say they'll be bigger than ever this year. That is a look at what we're working on for WTXL ABC 27 News at 11. We'll see you tonight. But first, more Bounce News at 7. Rahman?
Well, I don't know about those mosquitoes. Just ahead on Bounce News at 7. Speaking of mosquitoes, or pests rather, we'll talk with Casanova Nurse about those pesky sharks in the waters off the coast of Florida. Why are they there? Now, you can always join the conversation live. Find us online, bouncenews.tv. That's our brand new website. It's all about you. We're on Facebook, Bounce TV Tallahassee, and Twitter at Bounce TV Tally. We'll be right back. On the Korean Peninsula tonight, there is mistrust, military drills, and according to the state newspaper, Rodong Sinmun, the truce that ended the Korean War is now dead. CNN's Anna Corin takes a look back at that conflict and the millions of lives that were lost.
In the heart of South Korea's capital, nestled on the side of a hill, lie the remains of some of the country's fallen heroes. Grave after grave, row after row, are victims of the brutal and devastating Korean War. It began in the summer of 1950, when North Korean founder Kim Il-sung waged war on his southern neighbour. The Korean Peninsula had been divided after World War II, following 35 years of Japanese occupation. Russia took control of the north, the United States the south, with the border marked along the 38th parallel, also known as the DMZ.
It was the first hot war of the Cold War. It was the first United Nations war. It was the first and only time free world troops invaded or counter-invaded a communist nation, which was North Korea. And the results of that were absolutely horrific.
The North Korean regime invaded all the way to the southern tip of the peninsula before US and UN reinforcements pushed the enemy back well across the border. And then the Chinese arrived with a tactic that still haunts surviving Allied soldiers to this day.
The human wave, a very, very large mass of men attacking at very, very short range. Most of the fighting took place on hills, which is rugged terrain, at night and at very close range. So for the UN troops who fought here, I mean, it was a very, very traumatic experience, and some of the guys I know, 6 decades later, still can't sleep without the lights on.
One man who still has nightmares is In Jun Chung. He joined the South Korean military at the age of 20, desperately wanting to defend his country. The most brutal thing was watching my friends die, and I wasn't able to save them. My scars remind me of this every single day. Shot in the leg, the 82-year-old tells me a story about how he managed to escape after coming under attack one night. I couldn't see anything in front of me, and suddenly there were bodies everywhere. There was no way to avoid stepping on them. I tried not to step on their faces, but rather their arms and legs, because their stomachs were as soft as tofu. I kept falling, but we had to keep going. Otherwise, we would have been killed. While the Korean War lasted for only 3 years, the loss of life here on the Korean Peninsula was extraordinary. Conservative estimates put the number of dead at around 2 million. But with no official records out of North Korea, analysts believe the total figure could be as high as 5 million. In the end, North Korea was devastated, and at midnight on the 27th of July 1953, the armistice agreement was signed, effectively ending the Korean War. And as Pyongyang threatens to nullify the ceasefire, this grandfather of 8 says the stories of his war are now more important than ever. We must teach the younger generations because they know nothing about the suffering we endured. God forbid they need to prepare in case there is another war.
Now, a quick note, North Korea ended the armistice in both 2003 and 2009, so it's going to be interesting to see exactly where they go with this. Now, joining us live in the studio, Casanova Nurse, to talk about animal migration. And we've been talking about other kinds of sharks today, but literally black-tip sharks are off the coast of Florida. And we've seen this dramatic video about these just schools and schools of shark that are swimming off the coast. And we're all scared to get in the water. I'm a beach guy. I love the water. Is that something we should be worried about? And is this something that happens all the time? Or is it just now that technology is allowing us to see it, and that's why we're afraid?
Well, the monitoring of the schools of fish, if you will, the pods of sharks, it's been going on for quite some time, and there's a little more ease as far as detecting them. But it's also important to keep in mind this is something that happens every single year. Like many species, they tend to move into more favorable environments during certain parts of the year. And unlike birds that go from colder spots to warmer spots, sharks particularly like the cold water. But they also follow food. Who doesn't like food? Sharks are no different. So in the more southern latitudes in the Caribbean and certain parts of the Gulf and the Atlantic, the waters are still sufficiently cold, but there's also a greater availability of food. So they tend to follow where the food goes, and they move north and south and vice versa as well. So that's the pattern that's taking place right about now. These areas of sharks are moving into areas where there's more food availability, but the water is still cool.
Should we be afraid? I mean, because they're coming back this way, I'm thinking as the water warms up. Is that something we should be afraid of? I know, with the Gulf, are they going to come up the east coast of Florida? Will they come into the Gulf? What should we be looking for?
Well, when it comes to the Gulf, it seems like, in fact, there's a little bit of a factoid to give you. There's been 49 species of sharks found in the Gulf. But the one thing about the Gulf that is different from the Atlantic is that along our shore, we don't have an abundance of marine mammals on which sharks like to feed. So they will be in the deep waters of the Gulf, but not necessarily up close like what's been happening off of the Emerald Coast, or not the Emerald Coast, but the Treasure Coast and the southeast coast of Florida. So you may see sharks way off in the distance in the Gulf, but they're not likely to at least make this close of an approach very frequently.
Now, is there any truth to the fact that when sharks get a taste of human meat, that's something they it's a delicacy and they want more? So that's why I've heard these rumors, like that's why they hang out on the shore, because they want a taste of human. Is that true?
Not necessarily humans. Sharks will typically leave humans alone unless they feel threatened or if we get close enough to them. But they do savor the flavor of meat in general, not just humans, but if there's like whale chum or something out
dolphin
there, they will definitely look for that source and they'll be attracted to it, and they may try to go ahead and take a bite out of it.
So basically, listen to the warnings. And you might want to stay out of the water for a while as they continue to go north.
Yeah, those red flags, they go up for a reason, and it's best to heed those warnings.
Good stuff, good stuff. Casanova Nurse bringing us up to speed on what's happening with the sharks on the coast of Florida. Your best life in just a moment. We'll be right back. So, Today in Your Best Life, quite often we spend our days and nights moving so quickly that we don't take time for ourselves. You know, family responsibilities, work, life, everything just moves so quickly. And I mean, who hasn't said there's just not enough hours in the day? But as Thich Nhat Hanh says, taking a few moments could be life-changing.
The practice of meditation, the practice of looking deeply, has the purpose of removing wrong perceptions from us. If we are able to remove our wrong perceptions, we will be able to be free from the afflictions and the sufferings that always arise from wrong perceptions.
So taking those moments to simply clear your head could make your day run smoothly. So stop and enjoy breathing. That's another key to living your best life. I'm in the midst of a meditation challenge, and if you want to join me, check out our Facebook page. We'll put the details there. We'll be right back. Well, thanks for spending time with us. Bounce News. Thanks. I got a shout out to Marilyn Ross and Holly's son. Thanks for following us on Twitter. You can follow us too at our Twitter feed, Bounce TV Tallahassee. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.